Namaskaram. My name is Krishna Palya, and I'm a freshman at the University of Michigan. I would like to thank Michigan Sahana for this opportunity to present this lecdem as part of the Kala Sagara conference. And today I'll be talking about the eldest of the Trinity, Shyama Shastry. So first, I want to start off by just playing a small part of one of Shyama Shastri's most famous pieces, the Swarajati Kamakshi in Ragam Bhairavi. So that's just the beginning of Kamakshi Swarajati, and just in this piece, even in that small snippet itself, we can see many things that Shyama Shastry does that I'll get into further detail later in the discussion. But just to touch on them, we see, for one, he's a genius with using the ragam. So in the second swara that I played, we saw the phrase, and that's a very characteristic phrase of Bhairavi, and one that is very important in the ragam. And even here he uses the sahitya he uses for that in the sahitya of the Swarajati is the words Mayamma, and that's also a very important word that Shyama Shastry often uses. So right off the bat we could see how he uses ragam and sahityam, and even talam can be seen in this Swarajati in the beginning itself. It is set to Misra Chapataram, and if we look in the Pallavi, if we look at the line Anudinamu, he starts 10 after. So Anudinamu Maravagane. He starts with Tatyadam. So we can see mixing in the complexities of Ragam, Layam, and Sahityam right in that just a small piece of Kamakshi Swarajati. And the Kamakshi Swarajati is one of a set of 3 magnum opus pieces that Shyama Shastry has composed. The other 2 Swarajatis are also Kamakshi in Yadukula Kamuji and Rave Himagiri Kumari and Todi. So now to just get into a little bit more about Shyama Shastry. he is the eldest of the Trinity, and most of his compositions are in Telugu with a few in Sanskrit and Tamil. He's also composed the least number of compositions compared to the other Trinity, but approximately 70 or so have been passed down today. Shyama Shastry is a very big devotee of Devi, and most of his kritis are all on Devi. More specifically, they're on Kamakshi or Bangaru Kamakshi. So when he was a young boy, he would sing at the Bangaru Kamakshi temple in Tanjore quite a lot, and that was where he, got the passion to pursue music a lot more. He's always believed that, goddess Kamakshi would be the one to guide him, and this is seen through many of his songs. And one such example of a song is Kamakshi Bangaru in Varali. So this one is like Kamakshi Amba Kamakshi Bangaru Kamakshi Bangaru So right in this song itself in Kamakshi, he begins on the Ga of Varali, which is the Jiva Swara in Varali. And he uses that Ga straight away with the letter Ka. This is almost a Swarakshara, but not a Swarakshara, even though in some languages like Tamil it can be considered a Swarakshara. Going into Swarakshara a little bit, Shyama Shastry has also made very good use of the concept of Swarakshara. Just to clarify, Swarakshara is when the note or swara being played is the same as the letter of the Sahityam in that portion. One very notable example of this is in a somewhat rarer Shyama Shastri Kriti, Mayamma in Natakurinji. And here also he used the same principle as Varali, and he begins on the Ma, the Madhyama, which is also Jiva Swara in Natakurinji. So this Kriti begins like So right there, throughout the whole Pallavi, he's actually using the words or the letters Ma when he rests on Ma. And that's a very signature and characteristic use that Shyama Shastry makes very good use of. One more example is this is the Kriti Sariyavaramma in Bhairavi. He starts off the Kriti just like So he uses the word sari and the swara sa-tri. So, that's a very important use that Shyama Shastry makes very good use of. Going to my next point, in terms of ragam, Shyama Shastry, he loves composing in heavy, weighty ragams, rakti ragams. Kalyani is actually the ragam where he has the most number of compositions. The number that I've been able to count is 9. He also has many other compositions in a variety of ragams, from Riti Gauda to Puri Kalyani, Todi, Degada, Natkuranji, Ahiri, Manji, Varali, Saveri, and many more. One of his favorite ragams, and the one he's very well known for, is Ananda Bhairavi. Ananda Bhairavi is often described as Shyama Shastri's favorite ragam, and he takes very good care to personalize the Ananda Bhairavi such that it's very much differentiated from any other composer's Ananda Bhairavi. To just start off a little bit, I'll just play a small snippet from O Jagadamba, one of Shyama Shastri's pieces in Ananda Bhairavi, set to Aditaram. So right here we can see Shyama Shastri opens the Kriti with the most characteristic phrase of Ananda Bhairavi, and also the phrase that almost he is the one to put into Ananda Bhairavi and make it a characteristic phrase of the Ragam. And this is that phrase is signature Shyama Shastri phrase. And we can also see this in the opening of his Kriti, Marivere. So that phrase is that that's the very characteristic phrase of Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi. And this is a very big contrast from Dikshitar's Anand Bhairavi, which often begins in a different way. We see his Kriti Manasa Guruguha, it doesn't have that Mavanivam, it's a Panivam. That's how Dikshitar begins it. And in another ragam, another Kriti, Tyaga Rajam Yogam. So Dikshitar begins that Kriti in that way, and he doesn't, utilize that Ma-pa-ni-pa phrase around the Pa. Pa is also one of the strong notes of Anand Bhairavi, which is why Shyama Shastri will choose to begin his Kriti around the Panchama. There are also many differences between Dikshitar's Anand Bhairavi and Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi, and they're very notable differences. The biggest one of these is the use of Bhashanga. So Dikshitar, he mainly uses the Shuddha Daivata or the Da1 as his Bhashanga or foreign note, and this is very seen in Manasa Guruguha where it goes like this. That Da1 is the Bhashanga that Dikshitar often uses, and that is sometimes seen but is very less prominent in Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi. Conversely, in Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi, he uses Antara Gandhara, the Gatri, and that's a very prominent and important usage. I'll demonstrate in O Jagadamba's Anupallavi. And another place where this is seen as the Chitteswara of Marivere. that use of the Ga3 is a very key phrase and characteristic of Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi that is not seen elsewhere. Another very similar thing is the Kakal Nishada or the Ni3. That's also used in Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi only. It's seen in the Anupallavi of Marivere. Right there, it's used and it's a very key component of the Shyama Shastri's Anand Bhairavi. And both of these bhashangas are not at all seen in Dikshitar's Anand Bhairavi, and it's a very important differentiating phrase. And in regards to this, if you plan to sing a Dikshitar Kriti in Anand Bhairavi, you should not touch the Antara Gandhara or the Kakali Nishada in your Alapana. And fittingly, if you're playing a Shyama Shastri Kriti, it is appropriate to use both of those bhashangas in your Alapana or Nerval or Swaram, any manodharmam that you decided. There's also a very interesting story about Shyama Shastri and how he created the ragam Chintamani. So once Keshavaya, who's a great musician from Bomli, he came to Tanjavur where Shyama Shastri was, and he challenged all the court musicians in handling intricate talas and ragams, and Shyama Shastri was one of the ones who had to face him. So in this competition, he went to the temple and he started singing Devi Brova Samayamide, which means Devi, now is the time for you to protect me. And this was the composition that he set to the ragam Chintamani, which is also, I believe, his own creation. And Chintamani is a very different ragam, not seen in Tyagaraja or Dikshitar schools, and it contains bhashangas as well and is a janya of Shanmukapriya. So I'll just play a small piece from this composition. Devi Brova Samayamide Adivekame Vachidevi Brova So we see that in this kriti he has the nidhanam, the bhavam of the ragam Chintamani. Even though it's his own creation, he's putting so much bhavam, scope into the ragam, and we can see the full essence of the ragam being portrayed. And this brings me to my next point, that Shyama Shastri is a master at bringing out the essence and the full bhavam of the ragam in any song he composes. And in doing this, he doesn't need to show the full scope of the ragam, but he shows, in the amount of the ragam that he shows, the full effect of the ragam is there. And the ragam actually comes alive from the very first line of the composition, and the phrases that he uses are apt in the bhakti bhavam of the sahitya. One of the best examples of this is Brova Vamma in Manji. And because Manji and Bhairavi are allied ragas, he takes very good care to differentiate his Manji from the Bhairavi. And he makes use of those key differences in the very opening of the song. So this song goes like he's able to bring out the full power of the raga manji while not confusing it with Bhairavi at all. And some of the key differences are, when he rests on the da with or the riga ma phrase and the riga ma riga. That's right in the first line of the song itself. These key differences from Bhairavi are all seen, and that's what one thing that makes Shyama Shastri's compositions so different from anyone else's. Shyama Shastri was not only a genius at using ragam, but he was also a genius with tala and layam, and he's composed pieces in many different talams. This could be Adi, Rupaka, or even other talas in the Saptasulada system like Khanda Jampa, Tishramatya, etc. And most of Shyama Shastri's songs are all on the slower side. They all lean towards Vidambam, and you can see Vishranti or leisure in his compositions, and he takes the time and patience to address each and every line slowly and patiently. One small exception to this is the Kriti Parakela and Kedaragola, which is a Madhyama Kala Kriti and much faster, but as you can see here, it still won't feel rushed. This one goes like even though it is faster, it's apt for the sahityam, for the pace of the kriti, and it flows beautifully without any, it doesn't feel rushed at all, and the raga bhava is not compromised one bit. In terms of talam, Shyama Shastri's favorite talam was Mr. Chapu, in which he has numerous compositions, and this was very much seen to be his favorite talam. With Mr. Chapu, in some compositions, he actually takes an interesting twist and uses what he calls Viloma Chapu. And while Mr. Chapu is the normal takita takadimi, Viloma Chapu is actually backwards, and it is takadimi takita. So in this style of Viloma Chapu, he has one very famous composition, Ninnu Vina and Puri Kalyani. And even in his Mr. Chapu songs, we can see he clearly sticks to the structure of using the takita and then the takadimi. And in this we see the complete opposite, and it's very fascinating to see. And this is one example of Viloma Chapu. One more example is in one of his other favorite ragams, Kalyani. So he uses Viloma Chapu in these compositions. Shyama Shastri also uses Tisranade as one more complex tala that he uses. And in this talam we have the kriti Shankari Shankuru and Saveri. Adding to the complex rhythmic and laya structure of Shyama Shastri's compositions, he uses many different yadams in his compositions throughout. And one composition where this can be seen is Meena Lochana, Dhanyasi. Here this is set to Mr. Chaputalam, but he begins the Pallavi and Anupallavi on Pattatali. Meena Lochana actually right there in the Anupallavi, he's as a very subtle note, he uses the 12 vedam also. So it begins like Samana Jagana Kananoma. And that's how Shyama Shastri does the Pallavi Anupallavi of the Kriti. But if you move to the Charanam, he takes a completely new Adam and he takes Moonu Talli or 3. Samajagamani wo tamasambo seyaka samajagamani wo. Further line later in the Charanam, he actually begins on Samam. Chandra Karna Dharim. So this is one example of his very complex laya structure. One more notable example is Nannu Brovu Lalite. Here the Pallavi begins after 6. Nannu Brovu Lalite So the Pallavi will begin on 6 Talli. The Anupallavi and Charanam both begin 4 Talli or after 4. Ninnu Vinam Yovaro. And the Charanam is Sumbero Madhya Nilayim. But the interesting thing he does in the Charanam is for the line after that, he switches to an Edam of actually 8. So it begins like this. Shyama Krishna Sodari Kaumarim. So we can really see him veering around the Tara structure and using a very complex, laya and rhythmic structure here. One interesting thing about this kriti actually, and this is also seen in other kritis, but in this one, particularly in the Anupallavi, he uses the words. Ativegame vachi, ativegame vachi. So what ativegame vachi means? Come fast to protect me. But the irony here is that these lines are actually very slow, and there's a lot of nidhanam in these lines itself. So that's just an interesting paradox with it, such that Shyama Shastry is still calling Kamakshi and Meenakshi with full respect and love, but he's not rushing her, even though he's asking to come fast and protect me. Nannu Brovu Lalita is actually one of a set called Meenakshi Navaratna. So Shyama Shastry was actually in Pudukottai once, and an elderly saint was pleased with his singing and asked him to go to Madurai and compose a set of songs praising Meenakshi. And upon this, Shyama Shastry went to Madurai and composed what is now known as the Meenakshi Navaratna, a set of 9 kritis. In terms of the lyrical and Sahitya significance of Shyama Shastry often it's seen that he considers Kamakshi to be his mother almost. And the word Talli in Telugu means mother. And in the song, for example, that I showed earlier, Talli Ninnu Nera, he addresses Kamakshi as his mother, and that's how he opens the song. Shyama Shastry also often uses 5-letter words, Panchakshara, and these can include Anudinamu, Kamalamukhi, Samayamide, Gati Anuchu, etc. And none of these have extended letters or combined letters or anything. And that's just something notable about Shyama Shastry's use of words. One more thing he does is using repetition, which is called Punarukti. And one very notable example of this is in his kriti Mayamma in Raga Mahiri. He uses sthir. He uses the words Stiramani Nammiti, and he can repeat them in a variety of different ways. So one way it can be done is the original way, which is alternatively, you could do another option is to do so that repetition he uses, especially with the words nammiti, which is also seen in other compositions, is very characteristic to Shyama Shastry and something that differentiates him and sets him apart. So this was just a very brief overview of Shyama Shastry as a composer and who I consider to be a ragam, laya and sahitya genius. And unlike many of his contemporaries, Shyama Shastry did not have many disciples, yet a good number of compositions have survived and have been popularized in the future. And his son Subraya Shastry was also a notable composer and was actually a disciple of Tyagaraja. And overall, Shyama Shastry was one of the most prolific composers in Carnatic music, and I hope through this presentation you were able to gain a small bit of understanding about the composer and his music, which is filled with a lot of bhakti throughout. And thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for listening.